coming up next on The Health Hustle.
I remember that phone call. I was like on a sales call with a friend that I knew intuitively could help me get my business to the next level. And it was way more than I could afford at the time. And I sat there and did a meditation on the call. I was like, man, I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm supposed to do this. Let's go. And we made a payment plan, put it on a credit card, and I paid it off ahead of time and made more that following month than I ever had before. So it's like that. It unlocked a deeper level of remembrance of worthiness for me, that I deserve to invest in myself, and that this is how a faster way to sharing more of my gifts. And so I recommend that to others. Just whoever you intuitively feel called to, mentors or coaches, they can help you avoid some landmines and maybe accelerate years of your success. So.
What's up, y'all? Corey here, and on this episode, I had a chance to sit down with my guy, Charles Clay. Charles is an inner peace coach and neurokinetic pain relief specialist. In 2008, Charles experienced a devastating back injury while snowboarding, which is something that we get into on this episode. He was told by doctors that he would need to undergo surgery or may never move the same again. Despite doctors' orders, Charles was able to heal himself naturally without surgery. Since then, he has helped hundreds of hardworking professional and high-income earners heal themselves naturally with his guided support and self-healing tools. Some of the things that we get into specifically on this episode are his love for the beach vibes when he was living out in California, why he calls the body a sensory suit. I prefer meat sack, but that's neither here nor there. Leaving corporate America to start his own personal training business, the near-death experience, which was his back injury, tapping into your intuition, nighttime rituals, why your mindset about money matters so much, what visioneering is and how he coined that, reframing fear, getting unstuck, and so much more. One last thing, if you're a health or fitness professional and you're having difficulties getting leads, one of the most common reasons that I see this is not having a well-defined niche. If you go to the link in the description, I have a free 3-step process that walks you through exactly how to get clarity on which niche is best suited for you and your business. Without further ado, let's go. Charles Randall Clay, welcome to the show. How you doing, brother?
Very well. Fresh off my trip to Hawaii. It's good to be here.
Yeah, you look like it. You look very chill. You look like you've been having some good beach vibes.
Yeah, serving up aloha daily.
I did see your video of you eating some red. It looked like a dragon fruit, if I had to guess. Is that what it was?
Yeah, they have huge dragon fruit there. And it's one of my favorites. Same with my daughter. She just can't get enough of that stuff. And it's this like a luminous purple pink color.
Yeah.
So it gets all over her and everything she touches. So it's fun to play cleanup.
It's a beautiful fruit. I don't remember if they taste all that great though. I just remember they look very cool.
I love the flavor. It's not too sweet.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And it's got that, you know how kiwi fruit has those seeds that kind of give it a little crunch? Mm-hmm. It has the same thing. And my friends that own a farm there actually are experimenting with dried dragon fruit. And it's really good.
Is it a dragon fruit farm that they own?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, he started with one branch of this cactus. And that's what's pretty cool. It comes from the cactus flower. So it's some pretty epic fruit in the tropical region, then just started blooming and blossoming all along his farm there. It was cool.
There's a ultra marathon in, what's the island? Kauai?
Mm-hmm.
That it's around a coffee farm, I think it is. So if you get tired, you just grab some coffee beans and eat those things.
Yeah.
I don't know if you actually do that, but
You can.
yeah.
Yeah, that'll get you going.
I thought that'd be cool, though, to do one around a coffee farm in Hawaii. It looks amazing from what I've seen.
Absolutely. We even, not this last trip, but before we had toured some of the coffee bean farms there. And it was funny because, you know, they're showing their peaberry and all their top shelf, like highest quality beans. And then they get down to like their kind of throwaway or the worst quality
What's
beans.
a peaberry?
Peaberry is like a very unique, sought after coffee bean. It's some of the like packs the most punch, and it's just real top shelf, high quality, and all the way down to like their worst beans, lowest quality. And they're like, guess who we sell those to?
America.
Starbucks.
Oh, do they actually though?
Yeah, true story.
Oh man,
So it's funny.
I've actually heard it's crazy. I've actually heard the opposite about, I think it's Colombia. I hear Colombian has incredible beans supposedly, but all their best beans get shipped over to America, and so if you actually have Colombian coffee, it's not that great because they make way more money by selling better beans essentially.
Maybe that's why I'm not called to Colombian coffee as much.
Yeah. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've heard. This is not a show about coffee, but it is something I enjoy talking about. But realistically, though, I want to get into one thing I really want to make sure to cover for people on this show is helping them get unstuck. And I know that's a big part of the work that you do with people, and so much of that is rooted in just things that we've gone through in life that are just sitting there that we haven't essentially addressed or dealt with. But before we get into that, I first want to pull way back to you growing up in Washington and getting a kinesiology degree. Curious, why did you go with kinesiology as a young chap, and how does that show up today?
Yeah, great question. I began working at a really young age for my dad, and he built houses. And so, my brother and I were out there 11 years old doing all the grunt work, digging holes for pipes and like putting in installation, and just looking around going, man, I think we're the only guys with all of our teeth on this job site, and I just remember hating it. I just really didn't enjoy. I wanted to learn more, and I didn't get too deep into the carpenter, path, but I just knew that wasn't for me. So I was like, thanks for the contrast, Dad. I'm going to go to college, do something I do enjoy. And I've always had this fascination with human body.
Sure.
These sensory suits that we get to enjoy for such a short time here. So kinesiology was kind of a no-brainer for me.
Sensory suits? I've never heard that expression. I've heard meat sacks, but not sensory suits.
I like sensory suits way better than meat sacks.
I love it. I actually had a similar fascination. It's weird. I've talked about this on other podcast episodes about how I barely graduated high school. Like I literally graduated with a D. And they literally just pushed me out because they had no idea where the rest of my life was going essentially. And there was one class in particular, though, that I did very, very well, and it was physiology, and basically just the study of the human body. And I remember very specifically, we were doing blood testing one day, and there was a girl that straight up passed out at the sight of blood, and I'll never forget it because we thought it was funny. It was kind of scary, but we thought it was hilarious. But yeah, I can relate.
Yeah, you got to learn about her physiology.
Right. In that moment.
Shut down. Yeah, we back at Washington State, it was a really cool degree actually, because we were one of the few that got to really study on like cadavers and the real deal.
Body,
I felt like, and it was, took a little getting used to it first, like the smell, the formaldehyde, like seeing these corpses is a trip. But then before you know it, you're like Leonardo da Vinci, diving in the origin insertion, and it's just cool experiential learning.
So that led you to personal training. And so how long did you do the training thing?
Yeah, good 15 years. I moved from Washington State right after I graduated and went to California to live the beach life and, help people with fitness and, started as a trainer there and loved it. I was training like 10 clients a day sometimes, and then going out on the weekends and partying. And
what part of Cali was this?
This was San Diego, Pacific Beach.
Okay, so very chill vibes.
Yeah.
I was recently, for the first time actually, this past year out in LA and San Diego, and the difference in those places is insane.
Huge difference. Yeah, I would visit LA on the weekends occasionally to visit friends and stuff, but never really wanted to live there.
Yeah. Have you always been drawn to the more chill beach vibes? I mean, you were just in Hawaii. Is that always kind of been your demeanor?
Yeah. And Pacific Beach, PB, was kind of a unique one at the time for my age because, I remember like 4th of July's there, the whole beach was just covered with giant parties. And, it was back when you could drink on the beach, and it was it was a fun, party scene to go along with the chill beach life vibe. So it was a good contrast.
Does your brother have the same demeanor as you do?
Similar. Yeah. We have a lot of similarities, and and a lot of things that are way different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just curious as to how the upbringing kind of affected how you are now today in terms of the chillness.
You know, it's interesting because my brother was the one, he was older, 2 years older, and he was kind of planting the seeds. He was like, man, I want to go play beach volleyball in San Diego, in California, and like, you know, surf and live the beach life. And it was like that dream like kind of inspired mine. And then he was still in Washington. I was living in San Diego. I was like, man, when you come visit and live here, move here, you know, like I'm over here living your dream. And he would come out and visit a lot. We had a blast.
Did you idolize Arnold Schwarzenegger at all?
Oh yeah. Come on, do it. Yeah.
Was that part of the draw to going out to California at all?
Not really. I wouldn't say.
Did you ever meet him?
I haven't, but my favorite line of his was that sci-fi movie he did.
Terminator?
Yeah, I guess there's a bunch of them. Not The Fifth Element, but the space one.
Mars? Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, when he was getting fried on Mars and he was like, wow.
Yeah.
It's my favorite line all time. So good.
I've briefly watched some of the recent documentary of Arnold, and I've always loved him. I've always thought he was the greatest. The thing I've always been most impressed about him is that his ability to obnoxiously focus on one thing for long enough to get really, really good at it and then go on to the next thing. That's an incredible skill that few people hold.
Yeah, he's got quite the repertoire of that.
Right.
You know, from moving to the U.S., you know, to winning Olympia like 8 times, I think, and then going on to being a movie actor and crushing it and all those things, which is pretty remarkable. He's got a cool track record. So success leaves clues. From
politics to writing a book to... He's just very good at just focusing on one thing, mastering it, and then moving on to the next thing.
Yep.
Most of us spread ourselves too thin, which I can definitely relate to.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like a Renaissance man doing all the damn things. But
and they all go at like a snail pace.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Whereas if you just hone that focus into one thing at a time, then it's like you can still get to all your dreams, your aspirations, all the gifts you want to share. But it's just more focused one at a time by prioritizing it. Yeah, I think he was brilliant at that.
So you spent some time out in California. You're working as a trainer. You're doing the beach life. And was there a point where you eventually branched off and stopped working for the big club gyms, or were you doing your own thing?
Yeah. So I did get tired of the corporate atmosphere and culture. After a while, it was a lot of fun getting the experience there. But I remember, you know, we had this guy Chip that was like our regional, you know, manager that we would have, you know, maybe monthly meetings with. Big dude, big belly, you know, and he would just come in and just his style of management was just fear-based. It was like, you're not hitting the numbers and you're out of here, you know, and we're kind of looking around like, wow, another month goes by and the people that weren't hitting their numbers are still here, you know, and so it's kind of like, Chip, why don't you hire one of us, man? That's, you know, hit your fitness goals. And so it was just an interesting contrast. Like I appreciated that, like the, you know, corporate culture and get to dive into that experience to know what I didn't want.
Totally. Yeah, Matthew McConaughey says it best, right? Is we're really bad at knowing what we want, but we're really good at knowing what we don't want. And so obviously that experience as a trainer taught you maybe this isn't the place for me.
Right.
So what were the next steps then for branching off and doing your own thing then?
Yeah, so I began just super simple weekends in addition for a while doing boot camps. So it was like group training and then
on the beach.
Yeah, like right on the bay, walking distance from my place. It was so cool. And that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that chapter, and it was fun, you know, just getting big groups of people out on a sunny day morning, getting it done, and it was cool. A lot of camaraderie. That began growing, picking up a little bit, and I just finally left the gym and went to another gym where I could train my own clients without, you know, being charge, or they didn't take a cut or any of that. So there was a lot of, entrepreneur trainers there taking clients to this gym, and that was cool. It was a fun atmosphere. So it was kind of a gradual, nice, easier transition.
I feel like a lot of trainers get their start in doing the group style solo, whether they're like hauling equipment around or partnering with some local gym when they first start getting their first clients.
Yeah.
Something like that's like, I think it's an incredible place to start building your roots as a coach or a trainer or whatever, of like really working one-on-one with people or in group settings. But then I think the challenge or the hiccup I've seen so often is like, how do you scale?
Right.
How do you grow? Like, what do you do next? And so I guess like, was that the next moment for you where you realized like, okay, I can't do this forever per se, or I want to build something bigger?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there was a deep desire too, to not just be like training time for money, and so, cause I was pretty wiped out, from taking on so many clients and only having so many hours in the day. And then I would go blow off steam, chasing pleasure and sex, drugs, and rock and roll on the weekends, and so there I was pretty out of alignment with, as a health coach and trainer. And so that caught up to me. It's like the universe gives you a little feather, hey, you're a little out of alignment. You might want to make some shifts here. And if we don't pay attention to that, then it's like getting hit with a brick in the head, like a nasty hangover, or just waking up to some tough consequences from the choices we made the night before. And if we don't make any changes after that, then it's like the equivalent of getting hit by a Mack truck. And so that Mack truck experience was in 2008 for me. I was up in Mammoth Mountain, and this was a crazy day on the slopes. It was a full-on blizzard. There was snow coming every which way. And we were at the top, and I remember looking at my friends, like they'd shut down the lift because it was so dangerous up there. We didn't see anybody else around, and we're like, man, just stay low, be ready for anything. So we just charged down this mountain, this white abyss. You could barely see a tree, 5 feet in front of you, just a blur. And it was really fun for a while, and until about more than halfway down the mountain, all of a sudden I went off a jump that I didn't know was there. And it felt like I just went off a cliff, and I had no idea where the landing was. I'm just like in this white abyss, and I freaked out, tensed up. And man, when I hit, it felt like a lightning bolt just hit me in the low back. Like I knew I was in big trouble. And it was probably a level 11 out of a 10 scale of pain. And I'm yelling to my friends, hoping they could hear me, but they were in front of me. So they were just bombing down the mountain. Can't hear through the muffled snow. I look at my phone. My phone's dead. And I'm like, I'm in the middle of a mountain, like in bad shape. And I need to figure out how to get down here. It's a full-on blizzard. So I had to, in those moments, it's like we can channel that all the movies we've seen before, Gladiator, like my inner Spartan warrior from 300, and just found another gear. It was like just moving through the pain to click my board off and sit on it because I couldn't stand up yet. So I would just slide down as far as I could and then keel over and breathe into the pain for a while. And it was intense. And eventually I made it down the mountain, and then had to go see doctors and, see how bad shape I was in. They showed me MRIs and x-rays of how jacked up my spine was. And they're telling me, you're going to need surgery, maybe multiple, or you'll never move the same again. And for someone that appreciates these sensory suits and, my background in kinesiology, that was some of the worst news I could have gotten. And I remember even in a fight or flight state, and I was able to access my intuition and just know there was a different path for me. And so I opted out of that recommendation from the doctors and just began my self-healing path, which wasn't easy. It meant sitting in my apartment in San Diego at the time. I could barely even crawl to the bathroom. I was in so much pain, and any like wrong movement was like met by this intense, shockwave to my low back. And so I remember finally just surrendering. It was like my body was like, don't move, like just be here. And it's time to feel through all the things I had been avoiding, like the shame, whether I'd be able to, stand up straight and do anything productive, the fear of whether I'd ever get to move the same again, and even some grief that I hadn't fully processed from loss earlier on. And so there I was in this pool of tears and just going deeper into the depths of some of these emotions that I had been so good at avoiding previously. And, after a good cry, there comes like real clear clarity. And I remember just setting the intention to receiving all answers, to healing naturally. And during that meditation, a friend I hadn't talked to in over 2 years texted me right then and said, "Hey, I heard your back's in bad shape. You might want to check out neurokinetic therapy, NKT, the work of David Weinstock." And this took me down an epic rabbit hole of connecting a lot of dots for me with, kinesiology and my understanding the body. And this helped me understand like how everything was interconnected. And so I reached out to David Weinstock. I was like, "I think you can help me. I'm in bad shape." And he's like, "Well, I'm in the Bay, but I can set you up with my top student in San Diego near you." And that's when I met Christina. And I walked in to my first session looking like Shakira stuck in a mid-hip dance move, like my hips are over to the left, my upper body's over to the right. I'm like, "Can you help me? I'm a mess." And that was representative of how out of alignment I was with my purpose, not just avoiding all the stuff that I wasn't allowing myself to feel through. And so I got on the table and she started testing muscle groups. She would have me push down my foot and test my glutes, and my glutes weren't firing. And I was like, "That's weird." They were just super weak. Like nothing was working. And she had me clench my jaw and then retested the glutes, and all of a sudden they were working. So my body had just showed us through muscle testing that the neurological traffic jam was in my jaw and wasn't allowing the signal to get to the big guns, my butt muscles, to help stabilize the spine. And so she's putting these rubber gloves on. She's like, "You all right if I know we just met, but I'm going to have to go in your mouth." Is that all right? She went to release my jaw and it ached so bad, but literally like minutes after that release, it felt like just the opening up of pathways in my body. And all of a sudden my glutes are firing, much stronger now. And so we did that for a couple other compensation patterns we found. And I got off the table and I was standing up straight. I was 90% better in one session. And I gave her a big hug. I was like dancing. I was like, "I'm going to come see you every week. I want to learn this." I took all of David Weinstock's courses with him and became a neurokinetic therapist, and got to help other people have another option to surgeries.
When you said earlier that you set an intention to allow all natural healings to come into your life and be open to those, were you already like meditating or doing mindfulness type work at that moment of your life?
Yeah, I was keen to meditation. I wouldn't say I was good at it, but I had, a pretty inconsistent practice.
Where did you learn that?
Luckily, I have always had a really keen connection to my intuition. And one day, after I had completed my yoga teacher training, at the time, another friend had been through this similar training, and he was so excited to share with me this girl that he met and this retreat she was talking about with Geshe Michael. And he's a Buddhist monk that teaches, the science of karma and all these cool things in Guadalajara. And I literally stopped him mid-sentence and was like, "John, we're going." It was just like this deep pull. I was supposed to be there, and he was supposed to come with me. And he's like, "Man, that'd be awesome, but I don't have like a dime to my name right now. I'm so broke." And I said, "Well, we'll figure it out." I ended up gifting him the trip. And then another friend tagged along, which was cool too, because he had done yoga maybe twice. It's kind of like early on his spiritual journey. And so here we are, flying to Guadalajara and going to this retreat we know very little about. And I looked at my friends and I was like, if this is like some crazy cult and they want us to just drink the Kool-Aid. We can always opt out and just go to the next town over, tequila, and kind of start our own, vacation vibration our way if we want. So we had a good plan B, but that trip, that retreat was much more than I ever imagined. It was one of the first times I'd been just greeted with so much love and compassion and hugs from strangers. So that was kind of new to me then. And so many things unlocked during that retreat. I remember I was healing some other injuries, some other stuff that was coming up. And I met this guy I sat next to that was a yoga instructor, and he was just like deep blue eyes. You could tell he had some stories, and I was like, "What's your name, man? I could tell you hold some wisdom." And he's like, all he said was, "Come to my yoga class." And I was like, "Oh man, I'd love to, but I'm, dealing with these injuries." And he's like, "Come to my yoga class." And so by the end of that retreat, I had gone to his yoga class and just like kind of moved through a lot of fear of like getting re-injured. And, this was such a cool retreat because so many people were sharing, like they understood the science of karma, of like give and you can receive in the most beautiful ways. So everybody's sharing. These women from Argentina are sharing how to dance, and I grabbed John halfway through. I was like, "Dude, let's start a boot camp mornings." Before we made an announcement that night at dinner and just shared, "Hey, we're offering a free boot camp. Whoever wants to get fit in the mornings, join us, learn some cool stuff about your body." And, first time 2 people showed up. Then by the end of the retreat, like 40 people from it were joining for our boot camp workouts in the morning. And so I remember going to that yoga class that my friend invited me to, and something happened during that. One, I was physically doing things that I didn't even know I was capable of. Like I was like doing the splits, balancing on my front heel and like a couple toes in the back. And then by the end in Shavasana, dead man's pose, while I was laying there, man, I just got hit with like the most beautiful vision, and this was early on my spiritual journey. I had lost my mom when I was 10, and she took her own life because she dealt with some deep, depression and just some alcoholism. And so she literally came to me in that meditative state in that class, and it was like she brought this golden blanket and covered me with it, and I got to hug her again. And it was just like opened my heart. I felt like shields that I had just covered my heart with just got blasted open, and I was just like melted into this experience of getting to be with her again. And just started crying, and like tears are flowing, and I'm in the middle of this class, right? Like trying to hold back some grief, but it was actually like I gave myself permission to just be seen in that for one of the first times in, what I considered the ugliness of grief, right? Like the ugly cry with the snot bubbles and all the things, that I'd usually not let anybody see. Here I'm allowing that in the middle of a class, and everybody came and huddled around me and just gave like hugs, and they're like, "Man, we'd love to hear if you want to share." And I shared what I experienced, and it was this profound, realization for me that we're so connected to those that pass in human form. And I remember asking a sign for my mom to know that she was there, and literally a butterfly like came down and did circles around me. And she loved butterflies. Like she used to do like stained glass butterfly designs and all these things. So this was a huge awakening for me and a realization of like really what's possible. And so at the end of the retreat, Geshe Michael, the Buddhist monk, called John and I up there and, gave us some recognition and applause for sharing our gift to fitness, and gave us these mugs that said Tartuk. And Tartuk is ancient Sanskrit for rejoice. And that was the missing piece that one of the reasons I went there. I didn't realize, we're always planting karmic seeds, right? Karma is another way of saying like action always has a reaction. And so, whether you're doing good deeds or bad deeds, you're planting seeds, right? And so I knew naturally that I liked planting good seeds and doing cool things for others. But at night, before you go to sleep, before you dive into your subconscious, you can water those seeds simply by rejoicing in all the cool deeds that you did, the ways you got to help people, even if it's opening a door for a woman or, getting to support someone or making a meal for somebody. You take that into account and relive those experiences before you go to sleep, and it waters those seeds so that they can come back to you in the most beautiful ways and grow.
What does that look like? You just think about it?
Yep.
You just reflect on it?
Yeah. So you let yourself feel the experience of how good it felt to get to help this person. Right. And like the smile on their face or the connection, right. From being of service in any way. And it was profound. That became my nighttime ritual. And so it was cool to see, with all the masculine output I'd been doing, that now this allowed a little more receptivity at night to allow for that to come back to me in the coolest ways. So
I do this really interesting exercise. I literally couldn't even begin to tell you where it came from. I don't think I've ever actually talked about this ever on the podcast show, and I never even thought about it till you just brought it up. But I've noticed I do this really weird thing where I call it my 3 L's. And it's this trigger that happens in my brain when I lay into bed, and I for whatever reason I utter the phrase, did I laugh today? Did I learn today? Did I love today? And then I basically think about the 3 places of where those showed up in my life. I don't know why. I don't even know where those 3 came from.
You're already doing it.
But like that feels very similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's a great practice. And it's so great that I share it with my daughter. When I'm putting her to bed, we go through, what are all the nice things you did today?
Yeah.
And so it's really sweet. And it's cool because, with this cool simulation or universe that we're in, it's not like what you give always comes back to you as the same, right? It comes back in the great mystery in a number of different ways. And so it's just helping you water those seeds to let them grow and come back to you in the most beautiful ways. So yeah, it's a great practice.
It's the most human thing ever too. Like karma is a phenomenal word for it, but even like reciprocity is like, it's just, it's human. It's nature. It's law. It's you do good and good things return, or you do bad and bad things return. Right. Like it's just human law.
Totally. And it's same with our thoughts.
Right.
The more negative thoughts we choose or spirals we go down, then we experience more negativity in our reality here. It's careful which thoughts you're identifying with.
That one is actually huge. And I remember learning about that one in, what's it, Secrets of a Millionaire Mindset or something like that. I can't remember. Is that what it's called? But it's essentially like, if you think rich people are bad, or you see somebody in a really nice car and you're like, oh, they must have scammed their way to get that car, or you basically just have negative thought patterns about having money, you can never really expect to have money, because like, why would you want to be quote unquote bad if that's what you're associating with?
Right.
So the way you think about people who have money is actually really important.
Very much. Yeah. That's why it's great we're all just reminding each other what's possible. Right. So when you can either dive into jealousy, right, which is like, F that person, man, they rolling in there, if you have deep rooted beliefs that, money's the root of all evil, and these pompous pricks are running around spending all this money on their Lambos and stuff, then you're basically opting out of being rich, and if you celebrate, like, awesome, look what that guy got, he's rolling his dream car and having fun, and probably like getting a dose of the status that his like inner child really wants, to be seen, and rejoicing and like celebrating that, like then you're actually like riding that same frequency,
totally,
that wave, and then you can receive some too.
That's something I'd had to reprogram myself to, is like seeing somebody in a nice car. The programming for me now is like, man, I wonder how many people they helped to be able to afford that car.
Exactly. They must provide some serious value.
Right.
Which is a cool way to look at it. because that's, a lot of how I see money too, is I really love money because it's a great, a fraction of the indication of the value that you've shared with others, And if you look at it that way, then it's like, cool, let's make a lot of money.
100%.
I want to help a lot of people.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the Bezos of the world, right? It's like, can anybody argue that he's added more value than probably anybody on this planet? There's a reason he has more money than anybody on this planet.
Right.
It's like, it's crazy.
Totally.
So I wanted to pull back a little bit on, you obviously are a very intuitive person from a lot of these unique things and journeys that you've gone down and those experiences you had, especially with like just laying and meditating and having your mom show up. What does your intuition sound like, and how do you become better at paying attention to it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think it can be a little bit different for every person. It doesn't actually sound for me. It's more of a feeling. And I'm a feeler. So, it feels like a level of excitement and like an expansiveness to it. So when I get an invitation or a opportunity, I do a little practice that's really helpful. I'll just future glimpse, I call it visioneering, into saying yes to that, and then how, and all the details of it, and use your imagination, and then tune in to how it feels. Is it like, man, I knew I shouldn't have came to this. Like, I don't really want to hang out here. It's a bunch of blah, 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 whatever. Or is it like, I'm so glad I came. This is awesome. I'm glad even logically it didn't make sense, but I knew there was something here for me. And that's like a feeling of kind of, it can even show in your posture, if it's more like constrictive and kind of like shoulders roll forward feeling, then that's my no. And if it's more like expansive, heart opening and exciting, then it's a funk yes. And the more I've gotten better at the art of discernment and just letting go, saying no more, like there's an art form to it. You can do it really quick, easily. That's a way of honoring everybody for the invitation too. And then you're saying yes to something greater. Saying yes to yourself, that allows space to open up like that top shelf experiences and the really cool things that your heart desires, instead of saying yes to all the maybes that keep you playing at that level. And I would say with intuition, there's a great saying, it's when we're praying, we're speaking to God. And when you're listening to your intuition, that's God speaking to you. And so I've purposefully gotten really intimate with that aspect of myself, because I've noticed that every time I say yes and do the thing and honor my intuition, even if it's totally logically doesn't make any sense, that it leads to so much cool stuff. And it's also, every time you say yes to that, you're improving your connection to your soul, that seeks novelty, instead of choosing the safe route or the conservative route that's like the ego tour guide, right? Well, no, we should just stay here because it's familiar and we know we can survive here, right? Like, yeah, that's great, but we're here for much more than that, So it's a really cool relationship, and I help people access that and connect to their intuition on a more consistent basis. And a lot of that is first knowing how to regulate your nervous system, to come back into rest and digest, and parasympathetic nervous system, where you can access it much easier, because it's usually like the quiet voice. If it is for those that hear their intuition, usually if you're in fight or flight and your ego's the super loud voices, it's hard to hear the intuition amidst that and listen to it. And so it's been some of my work, is helping people access that. And it's amazing, because that's one of the first steps in self-healing, So it's been a really cool gift to get to share.
Yeah, I would say, even just speaking personally, I love that you use the word discernment, because it's something I'm continuing to learn and evolve and figure out. And I don't know that we ever master it.
Right.
I think it's always an evolving process of just getting better at it. Because I think the other word that could parallel with it nicely is wisdom. Is just like knowing the correct yeses and nos. Because literally the interview that I just did before you, and this is a big part of knowing thyself, is he's a yes man, 1,000%. He'll say yes to everything. And I'm sure a lot of amazing opportunities have come from it. But he's also the type of person that wants to be around people, with people 24/7 all the time. And he loves that and he thrives on that.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Like I'm literally like, where I thrived was I was out on a farm in East Austin for the last month with just basically me and the animals, and I thrived.
Yeah.
Like I loved it. Like it was huge for me. So I think there's a degree of like know thyself.
Totally.
And what your personal intuition needs and desires.
Absolutely. And it changes season to season too sometimes, you know?
Right.
Like depending on where you're at in your evolution yeah, the more you say no to the maybes, then such cool experiences can show up, and invitations, and that feeling you get when you're out with animals and nature and getting some time, that's a cup filler. You know, that's what your soul likes, that feels good, right? So the more you honor that on a consistent basis, that becomes like a gas station for your soul, you know, and then you're making more of those consistent stops. And then we have more people that are, you know, cruising around with full cups, with overflow, sharing from that place, instead of a bunch of people with empty cups trying to people please everyone else. Doesn't work well.
Is that how you got into the men's work then? Was that through that experience of just tapping into your own intuition and learning how to help other people with that?
Yeah, for me, a lot of the men's work was finally like finding a safe space that I could trust, you know, others, and letting more of my guard down. You know, I just had the deep rooted, you know, when I lost my mom, I remember sitting next to my brother at her funeral, trying really hard not to cry. And that was from the beliefs I picked up from the older kids I hung out with. You're a man, you got to be tough and can't show weakness and all this garbage. And so that took me a while to unravel, and it wasn't until like really close, intimate relationships and in a group setting, men's groups work, that I was able to let my guard down and kind of go through that initiation and be seen in that more, of sharing my truth. And that helped me access a more congruent experience of life, meaning that like my internal state was very congruent with my external presentation, right? Of like where I was at, instead of the, how you doing? Oh, I'm great. And I'm, you know, really feeling like anxious inside. Or so that cracked me open to being more authentic. Before, being authentic was super cool. And then that inspired me. I was like, wow, these containers are super sacred and powerful. And so I began, you know, creating containers and inviting men into men's groups. And that was some of my beginning, you know, after I'd gained the tools with neurokinetic therapy, and then did more of the group settings with men's groups. And I was even doing them online. I had people from like Australia and all over the world joining these men's groups, so we could get a pulse on, you know, all the different locations and what's going on in the world too, through the truth that these men would share. And so that was a real gift to get to share. And yeah, that was a big part of my journey for healing.
What were they coming to you for? What was the problem that you were helping them solve? And second part to that question too is, has it evolved? Do you feel like the things that people come to you now has changed from what you were experiencing from before?
Yeah. In yes and no. So kind of one of the main common denominators is anxiety, right? So that one's been through and through, from when I first started this work to helping people now that have reached a great deal of success monetarily, and, you know, they're keeping up with the Joneses, but there's still this like incongruence and this anxiety that they deal with, and it can come up at the worst times. And so I had to go through that initiation myself before I could teach it. And a lot of my, you know, coaching is based on years of doing it the hard way so that I could teach an easier way. And I remember, sitting with anxiety, and man, it was like I had been avoiding this feeling for so long. Like, whether it was public speaking to just having a challenging conversation, it was like I had to hide that feeling, that nervousness that was in me. I felt like it was something I needed to hide. I couldn't show any of that. And so
as somebody who is present and loves the beach vibes, that surprises me that you were carrying that around inside.
Oh yeah. And it was, I learned some gold from anxiety eventually, but it wasn't until I really allowed myself to sit with it. And I was like, I'm sick of this. It's coming up. It's been getting worse. It's something I've been avoiding. And it's usually avoidance, right? Like something our soul knows that we're either here to share or do, and we avoid it, or it's just not trusting in the process of life, right? And that's kind of the basis for it. And it's rooted in fear. And so when I actually sat with it, I remember it was so uncomfortable. It was like my mind was watching my body going, whoa, like get out of here. Like phone a friend, go to the fridge, stuff it, like hurry, get on, social media and like find some dopamine, anything. But I watched all those Band-Aids of the mind and just let them pass, and just kept sitting in the feeling, the somatics of this sensation.
Sensation of anxiety.
Yeah.
And so you were just focused on the aspect of, what does this feel like right now?
Yeah. And I remember reframing it, because even anxiety has such a charge to that word based on our past experiences. It could be very constrictive in nature. So I broke it down. I was like, well, let me just call this what it is. The A word is energy, and it's a lot of energy moving, right? And I would notice where it was showing up, right? It would be in like my gut, my throat. And so I went into it deeper than I'd ever gone before, and just eventually that uncomfortable feeling dissipates and dissolves, and underneath that was gold. It was like realizing anxiety was like an old friend that had been showing up to my door and knocking super loud because he had an important message to share with me. And I finally invited him in for tea, anxiety. And so here I am sitting with this old friend, and he's like, you're ready to see this now. And he showed like face to face my biggest fear. And I looked at it and was like, wow, I'd never really thought about this before. This life is so temporary. I'd been so close to death with my mom and others that I love, that it's given me a very unique perspective on how temporary these lives are, and at least these human aspects of them. And so that allowed me to recognize my biggest fear was deathbed regrets, of getting to the end of my life and looking back and going, man, I wish I would have shared that message on my heart, or man, I wish I would have shared this program that could have helped a lot of people, or, and so that has inspired me to not play small, and to, it like lit this fire. It was almost like even reframing fear as something that was there to help me, because I looked at all the other minor fears of like getting rejected or looking stupid at giving a speech or something, right? And those were like minute compared to this, superseding fear that actually was a catalyst and inspired me to create so much more. And I literally got my, list out of all the ideas I had and started getting to work on them. And that's when I created the laser focus method. And this was to help people that were caught in procrastination, how to cut through those distractions and gamify your get-to-do lists, instead of your to-do lists just being endless and keep taking up bandwidth from your mind and putting you into fight or flight. If I don't get all this done, then blah, blah, blah. So this program, it was a group training I did that was profound for a lot of people, because it helped them step out of over consuming, which we've been trained, conditioned, taught. All the brilliant marketing out there is like always consume something, information, all the things, into how to create space and focused time to access your flow state into your creations, and how to step into being a creator again. And, being the apple tree you see in nature, that's like, that apple tree doesn't give a flying flip if somebody thinks its apples are sour, it just keeps creating apples. And so we always have answers that nature's giving us like that. Like, just keep creating. It doesn't matter if someone likes it and someone doesn't. If it helps one person, then it was worth it. And even if it doesn't, it was you on your growth path sharing something from your heart. And so that helped me access like a deeper, inspiring energy at which to create from. And that's been really helpful in business, because I can tell when it's like, uh-oh, this isn't going well and I need these things to work, and how can I do all the things, and like trying to operate from Problemville, the mind. You can take a elevator ride 12 inches down into the heart space and a deep breath and go, wow, that's right. Look at everything I have to give.
You hit on so many things that are just parallels from our life that I'm finding humorous as we're having this conversation. In that you said a few things. One was, you said a get-to-do list, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. I do the same thing. If you pull up my list, it's not a to-do list, it's a get-to-do list.
Yeah.
That was something I programmed in myself pretty early on. And the second thing that you said, which is literally a social media post that's in my draft, ready to be posted, about the fear of regret. And I think that we all carry it. And it was actually the podcast episode that came out today, I was actually talking about it. And it was essentially that, even from like an entrepreneurship standpoint, is that I would argue that actually the only thing I'm afraid of is regret. And anything that business or relationships or challenges that have showed in my life have always been potatoes compared to the idea of regret. And so I can resonate with that so deeply. It's unbelievable. I'm baffled right now by how many parallels we have.
A lot of synchronicities. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because after letting anxiety, my old friend, in, it totally shifted my whole relationship with that. And actually I found gold in the depths of that. So it inspired me to go deeper into any other feelings. And so instead of being the stoic, nothing rattles my cage and, type of persona, I chose one day to allow myself to feel more instead of always trying to feel better. And that was a big shift for me, because I had a million hacks to feeling better in the moment and elevate your state and, breath work to raise your vibration and all these things, but they were capped, at a certain point. It was like the same level of joy, pleasure, more of the same, until I allowed myself to feel more and go deeper into the depths of that grief. And as layer by layer I let it move through me, then it opened up, broke through that glass ceiling, and allowed me to experience way more joy and way more pleasure and way more bliss and cool experiences on the other side of that inner work. And so that is what I love to share, is that the things we avoid, the feelings that are uncomfortable, the gifts you're meant to share, the more we avoid that, that's the only way that it stays with you, right? That which we resist just persists, and it's staying stuck as issues in our tissues. And it'll keep showing up and get poked and prodded and triggered until we go to the source of it. And that's why I love this work and having a simple process to go to the source of that, feel through it, gain the lessons from it. This is why I was supposed to feel this or learn this, and what the blessings are from that. That's when you don't have to do it again and again and again.
Can we get practical with people real quick on this? Because I think this is great. And I'm just now, as you're speaking, reflecting on what that means to feel more, in the sense of like, obviously what you're talking about is all the emotions and not putting labels behind them. If I had to guess, it's just, they are what they are, and allowing those to be, whether it's happy, sad, angry, whatever. But what does that look like from a practical standpoint? Like if there was a simple process to work through something like that, what would somebody do?
Yep. So say you are driving your car and a song comes on and it hits you, like strums a deep heart chord, and you feel some grief coming up or some sadness, right? Now, if you let your mind go into autopilot, it'll be like, oh, just got to get to work, just got to show up and put my mask on and, just say I'm fine to everybody that asks how I'm doing. Or you can honor that wants to come up right now. Pull over, just close your eyes and breathe into where you feel it. And I even have a step-by-step process to really go into the source of it and gaining those lessons and blessings from it, but just allowing yourself to really like carve out space for that emotion, that feeling that's been classified as uncomfortable or, a bad emotion. We're the meaning makers of that. So if you just, enjoy the senses of it, and watch as it moves through you and dissolves, and then there's gold to discover about yourself. And that comes back to knowing thyself. And that's why, we get to experience emotions in the full spectrum. There's no like outrunning any of the emotions you don't like, like literally if you're like, I don't like feeling frustrated, then you've just put that on your reticular activation. And now like more things will show up that create frustration and keep poking at that, little rose thorn in your heart until it gets addressed.
I love this so much. Thank you for unlocking some of this stuff for me. It's something I'm glad you're putting verbiage and language around a lot of the stuff that I think I've sort of intuitively done, especially as of recently. Don't get me wrong. I'm not some like wise person that figured this out, but even literally this last weekend, do you know Macklemore, the rapper, song artist? He has a song called Excavate. I don't know if you ever heard it before. But he basically talks about how his greatest accolades isn't his money or anything he's ever accomplished. It's literally his daughters is the thing he's most proud of. And I don't even have kids, but I remember, and I'm not a crier, but like tears came down my face. And I literally put that song on repeat and probably listened to it a dozen times and just allowed whatever emotions to be there, as if like, cause like it's okay to cry, right? Like there's nothing wrong with it. And so it was just, I feel like I've intuitively figured some of this stuff out, is allowing those emotions to flow through, but I've never put this much language around it. So this is helpful.
I have a whole playlist that's called Feel It Fully. And it can help, it's all the songs that help catalyze any 3D debris that I may be carrying. And I call it 3D debris. It's the unprocessed emotions. It's the heaviness that anything that we've been avoiding. It's creating a space for that to come out. And it's the same thing with movies for me. Like we don't watch a lot of TV, but occasionally I'll be like, my intuition will be like, I got to watch that movie. And when I watch it, it'll be like something that like totally brings me back to like my 6-year-old going through something and like allow some tears to come up. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know I was holding that. So it's beautiful when you follow your intuition in that way. And then how do you feel after a great cry?
Amazing.
Right? So much lighter, so much more clarity.
Yeah.
And so think about all the weight we choose to keep carrying by avoiding what wants to move through us.
Would this go hand in hand then with the thing that we teased in the beginning of this episode about getting unstuck? Is this a big part of that work?
Absolutely. Yeah, because it's fascinating. I've done this long enough where it can literally be unprocessed grief from childhood trauma that's in the way of your business getting to the next level or opening up those floodgates of abundance flowing in. It's all interconnected. So that's another example of like how the emotional aspect will show up, practically in our business or in our everyday or relationships. And so it's good to have these tools, that a way of accessing and allowing yourself to feel through that, because on the other side is more clarity and you're opening up the floodgates for new possibilities and, new clients to come in, or all the amazing things. And my hat's off to all the entrepreneurs out there, small business owners, because that's in the Matrix, like one of the greatest self-development courses for sure. Because you'll meet all your resistances and all the things you hate doing. You can either put them on your get to-do list and roll up your sleeves, or keep avoiding it, or try to, delegate, but it's so confronting that it's a fast acceleration course for sure in the human experience of self-development. And so that, coupled with that example, like guiding a client through where the grief was hiding in their body, right? Might be like solar plexus is where they feel it. And then that can take them to when was the first time they experienced that feeling, right? And your body's so intelligent that it knows layer by layer what wants to be healed and released and revolved. It's the 3D debris that's no longer in congruence with your evolving self. And so it'll pinpoint, through this inner peace process, like where that experience was, that a younger part of you just still feels stuck in that. Like they still feel like they're caught in this loop of, dad yelled at me. And, that's when a lot of these limiting beliefs are created. We create them for ourselves, like to ourselves. That's when the decisions are made of like, wow, I must not be good enough. If I'm getting yelled at because I effed up, then that must mean that I'm not good enough, or I'm broken, or there's something wrong with me. And then that's what keeps showing up in our subconscious, in our businesses, in our relationships, as feeling stuck, right? So then when you can go to the source of it, and then through this reparenting process, you get to join your little 6-year-old in that experience, knowing what you know now, and get to connect with him again and give him some advice, and hold space for that part of you. And by doing that, you're bringing love, support, and safety to the part of you that needs it most. And that's pretty powerful, because then it can allow the emotions that have been stuck to allow your body to finally metabolize that. And that frees up a lot of energy in your system, like the same energy that creates planets flowing to you and through you. And you get to pull those weeds of limiting beliefs, like weeds from your garden, and plant some deeper seeds of truth. Like, yeah, I understand why we made that decision about ourselves then, but that's no longer true. Look at how much I've grown. Look at all this, life's been providing for us from day one. We've always had more than enough. Check it out. And then you can rescue that version of you from that experience. And it's making peace with your past, which will ultimately pave the way for such a easier, brighter future. That
Do you think you need a guide for something like this, or do you think it's something somebody could do on their own?
That's actually what's really unique about my work, is that I'm not like a chiropractor or therapist that's like, yeah, just see me twice a week for the next 5 years, or I'm let's go straight to the source, guide people through the experiential learning, and then give them the take-home version of it. So now they have a step-by-step process that anytime they get triggered, they can watch as the mind goes, hurry, this doesn't feel right. Go to the fridge, stuff it, go find pleasure quick, or which just perpetuates it, or they can get out their journal and these 7 steps and take it through that to go to the source of it and resolve what's been holding them back, keeping them stuck. And by doing that, every time you're actually metabolizing that energy, releasing those negative subconscious beliefs, you're not only healing that for yourself, but for your children and their future generations. And so it's very heroic inner work, because that's still my greatest inspiration, is my daughters. And every time I get triggered, I can either choose, the coping mechanism of the mind, the Band-Aid, or let me take a moment to heal this for me and for my daughters, so they don't need to carry on these generational wounds.
Can you workshop with me real quick?
Mm-hmm.
We can do a very short version of this because like as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about there's a very specific memory that I have. It was either middle or high school. I can't remember where exactly, but a teacher basically had to have a conversation with me about something in class, and it was in front of my peers, and I remember crying. And I remember feeling incredibly embarrassed in this moment. And it was something related to like public speaking of some form. And now I'm a lot better about it now because of, I would say, exposure therapy of doing enough like speaking in front of people or doing a podcast show or creating content that I'm a lot better about it. But it is a memory that still pops up in my brain and the emotions that come out of it are like anxious and fearful, and sometimes I get like short of breath sometimes, and it's like hard to speak, and it's hard to like get my words out because like I'm embarrassed in this moment.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really affect me that much now, but it is a memory that I'm still very aware of, and it was something that took me a long time to work through. Like I said, through just more exposure of, I tried doing some stand-up comedy for a while, and like just because it's incredibly uncomfortable, and it helped me work through that.
Right.
But what if I wanted to like take that to the next level? Like what is something I could do to work through something like that?
Yeah. Try out this inner peace process. It'll help connect the dots for you. And how old were you then? What was
middle school, high school?
Yeah.
16 maybe?
So 16. 15. Yeah. So roughly 15. In this process, you can identify where that emotion, the common denominator was embarrassment, right? Human emotion. We all experience it, but it's one that we've been taught to avoid, right?
Totally.
And so diving in with that 15-year-old as your current self, getting to support him through that. Now, it's not like he's feeling all alone and isolated. He's got you. And so you can reframe things for him and say like, man, what amazing courage you had to even show up in that experience, you know, and that it's okay to feel embarrassed. Like actually everybody does at times. And that, you know, I'm here to support you through it, and you don't have to do it alone. And then you can even tune in, check in with him, how he's responding, right? The first time I did this work, I checked in with my 4-year-old that had just found out that my parents divorced, and my mom knelt down and gave the whole, you know, I'm leaving, don't know when I'll come back. I remember her lipstick color, the leather she was wearing. And when I went to connect with my 4-year-old, he, in this meditative state, he had like arms crossed. He was pissed at me too. He didn't want anything to do with me. And I was like, man, I'm just here to help and checking in with you. And he just like chin up against the wall, kind of just pissed off because I had abandoned him too. It was like leaving that part of me in that experience. And I was like, man, I need you on the team. Like you have genius imagination, right? Like I don't want you on the sidelines. Like we need you on the team. So what is it that you feel you want to express? Like what is it that you need? And he was like, my younger self was like, I want to break something. Like he was pissed, right? Like an Incredible Hulk kind of rage. And so I was like, cool. We were moving at the time, so let's honor that. Let's go outside, take one of these chairs we don't need anymore, and went out to the sidewalk and just smashed the chair and let him smash this. And then we did some shadow boxing, and like, dude, next thing you know, he's like big smile on his face. He's like wants to play. And I said, do you want to stay in this experience, or do you want to come with me and get caught up to speed on everything we've created, how much we've grown now? So when you connect with that, your younger self in that way, in a meditative state, and it helps to be guided through it the first few times, and then you can take it and run with it when you have the process. And it's so inspiring because that version of you has a lot to share and has some imagination that you want him on the team, like full throttle. And so when you rescue him from that experience and get to identify the thoughts, you know, the limiting beliefs that were created then, it was just simple decisions that you made about yourself in that experience. Sometimes it's like, oh man, I must be stupid, or, I'm not as good as everybody else, or just stuff like that. Once you identify those, then as your current self, you get to share a deeper truth. I understand why you felt that way and why we made that decision, but guess what? Things are different now. And then in this process, you get to connect and call in a higher self, call in your older, wiser, sage version of yourself that has some wisdom and guidance and advice for your current self in regards to this. And that's super profound, because it's so cool to watch people like connect with this version of themselves really easily in this process and gain really potent advice from an all-knowing version of yourself. And that is going to be a much better resource than anything you're going to type in on Google. So it's good to have.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I feel like so much of our life is developed in those transformative young years, and then we spend the rest of our life unpeeling the onion of what makes us tick and how we can improve upon it.
And how all those so-called traumatic experiences, events, were actually happening for us, right? To help us, catalyze us on that growth page if we choose to dive into it.
Right.
And that's some of the most beautiful work that I get to do, is reframing those events that were neutral. Yeah, lots of bad things happen, but we're the meaning makers of it all.
Totally.
So if you can gain why it happened for you and how you've grown from it, what are the blessings from it, then it catalyzes your dreams coming true. Like, it literally unlocks a lot of your heart's desires just being magnetized to you by releasing that energy that's been stuck as issues in our tissues.
Another thing that you just unlocked for me, so thank you. Another memory that I have, to your point exactly about being meaning creating machines, is I remember as a child, there was a poster, a quote on my wall, and it said, God doesn't make no trash, essentially. And I obviously still now think about that, is that, yeah, we're all good. Like, God doesn't create trash. We all have the opportunity to be good and create meaning from the things that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the worst villains you can think of, or the evil perpetrators of what's going on in the world right now, they're playing their role. They're actually here sharing the most potent dose of contrast here on Earth, which is, in my experience, we don't get to experience contrast in the same way, the heaviness, when we're in energetic states out of these bodies. And so what a great frontier and classroom to be learning in here on Earth, from, like you said, getting clear on what you don't want. And then I don't need to give that any more of my energy and attention anymore. Let's create something better that is worthy of my attention and energy. And so those that, are just bad mouthing and, criticizing and yelling at, the big corporations or the evil leaders, that's fueling the fire. It's like, cool, thanks for the contrast. That inspires me to create something better, and that's a good use of our energy. And, it's the same thing that what makes movies good, right? A movie's only as good as its villain, or, and so there's like this human nature aspect that we crave, that contrast, like the
ebbs and flows of everything, the rise and falls of the tides, and the sun and rise and fall. And we could go on for this for literally forever, but I do have a round of rapid fire questions for you. So it's whatever the first thing is that comes to mind. What's your best business advice?
I would say get support. Reach out for support when you need it, instead of trying to do it solopreneur style. It's so much easier.
Best marketing advice?
Be yourself. Like, don't fall for all the same stuff that's been out there and ways people have been doing it. Do it your way.
Authenticity before it was cool. What's your favorite part about entrepreneurship?
It is an accelerated course of growth and expansion and evolution.
It will show you all of your demons.
Yeah.
When are you the most productive?
When I get out of the water after a healthy reward, take my, when I check something off my get to do list, then I reward that and rewire my brain to self-sourcing. So I'll hop on my bike. I feel the feeling of freedom because it's like wind flowing through my hair. I'll go to the cliff, jump in the lake, and float in a lake of gratitude, and then hop back on my bike, come back to work for the next thing on the get to do list. And now I'm in a epic state of like channeling that Leonidas, of just feeling that same energy that creates planets flowing through me. And then I get to create from that space.
Gamifying life, man. You touched on that earlier. That's awesome. Who is your inspiration?
Bruce Lee.
Okay. Why?
That dude packed a lot of soul into a little body and carried so much wisdom. Like, I love his quote, it's better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener at war.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot too. What's one secret about you or something just most people don't know about you?
I was on a TV show what feels like lifetimes ago. It was Eliminate. It was a really funny like dating show that was on TV back in the day, and I was on that. It was pretty funny. Talk about embarrassment. Like, if my friends get me together and watch that, that'll bring up some layers of that. It's funny.
What would you change about yourself?
I would change my style.
Your style?
Yeah.
Clothing?
Yeah. Like, I feel like it's time to upgrade to where I'm at now. I'm not a big shopper or any of that. And I kind of appreciate, like Steve Jobs and these successful models that are like, I only have so much energy of decisions each day, so I'm just going to wear the same jeans and the same white t-shirt. Mm-hmm. That's cool. But I also feel like my appearance, like my style, clothing, all that's due for an upgrade to match my inner state so that that's in coherence.
I like that. Shout out to Roan, their company that's been sending me a whole bunch of free gear.
They're
so
awesome.
I pretty much wear all their stuff.
Yeah.
So huge thanks to them. Mm-hmm. What's your favorite app or resource that you're using right now?
I'm very simple. I love taking pictures and doing like quick edits and stuff with, my girls are growing so fast that I like using my phone to serve me in ways like that, like capturing epic moments. We got a lot of those in Hawaii, and and then getting to edit those. So I'd say favorite app's probably my camera on my phone.
I can probably relate. Yeah. I mean, we're recording right now, so yep. I can definitely relate to that one. When were you the happiest?
The first memory that comes to me is what inspired my book. Actually, I was in, just to make it real quick, I was in Sweden visiting a friend that was in San Diego. We became friends, young guy, and he invited me to his family in Sweden, and I brought my brother. We were there for Midsummer, which is a really cool holiday there. And here we are jumping off these cliffs on an epic hike and hanging out by this waterfall with his mom had made this gazpacho and like gluten-free quiche that was just amazing. And it was like my senses were enhanced because I was on that vacation vibration amongst incredible people. And I remember laying on this bedrock after like jumping in the ice cold water, and so much energy was flowing through me. It was like my higher self was like, hey, you can't hold all this in one body. You're meant to share this. And so I was like, yep, I made a deal. I said, all right, I'll do the thing I've been avoiding and I'll get published this year, right? Like made it like pretty audacious, hairy goal because I didn't consider myself a good writer or anything. And literally, I remember all the thoughts of like, you're not a great writer. Mm-hmm. How are you going to get it published? Mm-hmm. This isn't going to work. I let all those go by like waves. And a week after I got back from that trip, a friend I became friends with later that it reached out to me on Facebook and was like, hey, you came recommended. We're doing a new book, and we'd love for you to be a co-author in this book. And that's how we wrote the Better Business book. And it was like, instead of having 100, books on business that you got to thumb through hundreds of pages to try to get to the gold, this is one book with 100 different golden nuggets from all different walks of life, entrepreneurs. And so I got to write one chapter and publish our first book. It was a really cool experience of like intention and manifestation.
Damn, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part about Austin, and you can't say the people?
I'd say the water, actually. I think that's what makes Austin so special, is these springs. I like love the dark turquoise, and it's so mineral rich here that you'd notice it in all the plants. We live by the Greenbelt in Lakeway, and I take my girls on these walks from our place, and it's like the plants are super happy here, and they're just vibrant. There's places that feel like you're in Costa Rica here. And so that has exceeded my expectations of Texas in a lot of ways. And it's all because of the water. If the plants can thrive, then everybody else can here too.
That was a big shocking moment for me as well. I come from Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes, and there's technically, I think, 15,000. But yeah, when coming to Austin, I was like, whoa, there's way more like water and hills and greenage here than I ever expected. I have one last question. Before I ask that question, though, I just want to acknowledge you, man, for the work you're doing with inner healing and helping people find peace and helping people work through just emotional, challenging situations, from dealing with inner child issues to being stuck and wanting to live a better life and doing it through a place of coaching and mentorship and even all the fitness stuff that you did back in the day. So I want to acknowledge it, and I think a lot of people appreciate what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you. I received that.
Thanks. So before I ask my last question, what's your plug? Where can people find you?
Yeah, charlesclay.coach. Really simple. And that's the same for Instagram. Just shoot me a DM if you're on Instagram, charlesclay.coach. If you want to try a free alignment activation, that's on my website. If you subscribe at the bottom, all kinds of fun stuff there to dive in on. And if anything, this podcast resonates with you, don't hesitate to reach out.
Cool. Put it in the show notes. So last question, it's really whatever your best piece of advice is if you were to go back to the earlier days of your coaching and your business and what you're doing. So if you were to talk to your younger self or anyone else back in that situation, they were like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. Like, what's maybe the best piece of advice you could give to that person?
Yeah. For me, it was hiring a coach. Literally, that accelerated my path in business big time. And I remember that phone call. I was like on a sales call with a friend that I knew intuitively could help me get my business to the next level. And it was way more than I could afford at the time. And I sat there and did a meditation on the call. I was like, man, I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm supposed to do this. Let's go. And we made a payment plan, put it on a credit card, and I paid it off ahead of time and made more that following month than I ever had before. So it's like that. It unlocked a deeper level of remembrance of worthiness for me, that I deserve to invest in myself, and that this is how a faster way to sharing more of my gifts. And so I recommend that to others. Just whoever you intuitively feel called to, mentors or coaches, they can help you avoid some landmines and maybe accelerate years of your success. So
there's no faster way to learn than to find somebody who's gone before you. Totally agree. Thanks for being on the show, brother. Hey friend, thanks for listening to the show. And if you have any feedback for me about the show or any other guests that you'd want to see in the show, definitely shoot me a message. I love engaging with my audience and figuring out how I can provide the best value possible to the people listening to this show. Before you go, I only have one ask of you, and that would be to check out my 3 Tips Tuesday newsletter. It's 3 marketing tips every Tuesday specifically for the health and fitness entrepreneur to help them attract new leads. If you press the link in the description, it'll take you directly to the archive of all my previous newsletters, and you can decide for yourself if it's something for you. If you end up finding it helpful, you can just sign up for the newsletter and you'll get it in your inbox every Tuesday. Thanks again, and keep hustling, my friends.